Bonn Park is supported by Counterpoint Brewing Company. Nothing says summer like a refreshingly tart, clean, crisp kettle sour ale with apricots. Aptly named You Are My Sunshine from Counterpoint Brewing Company. A dream 8 years in the making, friends Graham Kobayashi and Rich Reitzeg opened Counterpoint Brewing just last year, serving a selection of robust porters, hoppy pale ales, and deliciously fruity and funky sour beers. Their taproom is inviting, and Counterpoint has created an inclusive environment for all to enjoy their beer. And they have beers for every season, like last month's Rite of Spring, brewed with a blend of 4 grains and finished with mandarin orange zest and lavender to awaken your senses. For spice junkies, there's Con Motofuku, Counterpoint's rich imperial stout with heat, delivering deep flavors of bitter dark chocolate and roastiness with a wave of fiery habanero and jalapeno peppers. From bold IPAs with plenty of hops and plenty of haze to their punchy and tangy Oat Ghost Rodeo, a sour wheat ale brewed with Indian coriander and sea salt. Counterpoint brings to their customers a constantly rotating selection of beers, using only the highest quality ingredients. Brewed with intent, harmony, and excitement, their Duet 2 is a pale ale brimming with hop-driven notes of citrus and one of the most aromatic and crisply refreshing beers you've ever tasted. Then there's the Major Triad, a double IPA with bold dankness on the forefront, followed by freshly squeezed orange juice, pineapple, and mango, with a light bitterness to round it all out. Rich and Graham have sipped many suds together over the years and are passionate about perfecting certain styles of beer, reinterpreting others, and exploring new flavors and concepts, as their tap list speaks to different people and an endless variety of flavors and traditions. So if you're looking to pique both your interest and your palate, Counterpoint's bright, sunlit brewery is a destination for anyone who enjoys exploring, savoring, and discovering something new in a world of craft beers. Visit Counterpoint Brewing Company at 935 Frederick Street, Kitchener, or check out their online retail store at counterpointbrewing.ca.
Welcome to Bonn Park.
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 Welcome to Bonn Park. I'm Sara Geidlinger.
And I'm Waterloo Ward.
And today we have Brian Bourke.
Brian has been a popular radio show host, a news director, an assignment editor, a media and communication specialist, a newspaper columnist, a public speaker, fundraiser, and he's known all over Waterloo for his Poster Boy campaign and also for being a city councillor.
Yeah, he was a ward councillor for a number of years. And I actually know Brian because he used to be my neighbor.
He was my neighbor too. And for the past 2 years, he's also hosted the afternoon radio show Kitchener Today with Brian Bourke on 570 News.
What I really appreciate about Brian is his sort of no-nonsense, common sense approach to things. And I also like listening to what a proud father he is.
Yeah, he's a really trusted voice in our community for so long now. I appreciate his candid nature. And I want to ask him what it was like to camp out on top of a King Street billboard for the Poster Boy campaign.
I think it was probably pretty tough, but let's hear it from Brian. Here he is. Brian Bourke, thank you so much for being here.
It's nice to come back to my old hood. Never got down to this area because I wasn't allowed in, but still.
This is the fancy part
Yeah,
of our
this is
hood.
a fancy part.
Sarah, we were all once neighbors at one time.
That's right.
So how did you meet Brian?
I met Brian in our old hood when he was out walking his dog, Billy. Ruby.
No, I think it was Billy you met. Billy
Sorry.
the Wonder Dog.
Billy the
Wonder
Wonder
West
Dog.
Highland Terrier.
Yep.
Who, when we got, was too fat to walk.
Oh,
It's a true story.
tell this story, please.
Well, no, because my wife wanted another dog. My daughter wanted a puppy. So in order to continue to disappoint our children, we got an adult dog. And it was a little West Highland Terrier, I think mixed with a Bichon Frise.
Okay.
Looked mostly like a terrier.
Is Bichon the one that's like moppy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And his name was Bobby, so we changed his name to Billy to confuse him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why the name was changed. And brought him home on Halloween the one year. I remember this. And he lived with an older lady in London who fed him table scraps, and he was paper trained, which means you're not trained at all.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, he was too fat to walk. His little feet, it was like a cartoon, his little feet wouldn't touch the ground. So for the first couple of days, we had to carry him outside so he could do what he needed to do.
Yeah.
And then eventually he lost that weight, and that was awesome. And he was able to walk, and then he became type 2 diabetic.
I have so many questions.
Would you like to know how to test the urine of a diabetic West Highland Terrier?
I'd like to know that. I'd also like to know how this dog got so fat.
He just didn't get a lot of exercise.
Okay.
And the lady was unable to take him out,
Right.
which is why she decided to give
him up. Okay, so how do you test the urine of a dog for type 2 diabetes?
First, you get a metal coat hanger.
You're
Right?
joking.
No, you need a metal coat hanger, and you need like a small pill bottle, which you wrap the metal coat hanger around, so it's on a. So
Well, it's like a catch program? Like
you got to slide in underneath, right? And so this is the male dog who doesn't lift his leg up to pee. Mm-hmm. So now you got to slide right in. And it took about 2 times before the dog realized, you're doing something that I find inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. Get out
And
of
then
my
it
space.
got very difficult after that.
Then it
only
became
had
a game.
We only had to test him once every couple of weeks.
That's still pretty often to be doing this dog and pony show. Is that what
Well,
you call it?
and then once we did that, then you had to give him insulin every day.
Right.
And so he would wait until you gave him a shot of insulin, then he'd go eat his food. He
Poor buddy.
adapted he lasted about 6 or 7 years after that.
That was
So,
going to be my next question. How long did he live like
he
this?
lasted for quite a while.
Well, I know that he got a lot of exercise with you and your wife because you guys were always out walking that dog, which is the right thing to do, right?
It's the best way to see a neighborhood is to
It's-
have a dog.
Exactly. And that's why we met you because you were
Yes.
walking up our street there.
And it's the same thing I do now because we have another dog. Her name's Ruby. She's a St. John Ambulance Therapy dog.
Oh, yeah?
She's a Wheaton Terrier Poodle Cross. She looks like a Muppet. Mm-hmm. And so that's we're out with her all the time. She loves to run and play, and she loves to go meet people. It is everyone should have a dog in the suburbs so they can meet each other.
So they can meet each other. We talk about this a lot because what do you call it? You call it the garage door opener community.
Yeah, just the way people drive into the garages. The garage door opens, they go in. Sometimes you barely even see your neighbors, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the only other way to meet people is if you have a snowblower in the winter.
Yes, which my husband Steve does now too, and he's met all the neighbors. This
Yeah,
is the
we
first
did that.
place we've ever lived where he's known the neighbors. Yeah.
We did that many times. And one really nice lady, they had just moved here from China. And we had one of those snowstorms. It was 15 or 20 centimeters of snow. And I had a snowblower that I really wanted to use. So I went up and down and cleared off a few. She came running down the street and knocked on the door and gave us a box of truffles and some Ovaltine.
Oh, that's really
Which I thought was, I have a need for neither one of these things, but
Yeah.
thank you so much. That was
That's
just
so
felt
nice.
determined to give us something, and they're very, very nice people.
The reason why, though, and I've given people, before we had a snowblower too, I've given people gift cards or cookies or whatever because it's just so appreciated when somebody takes care of the snow for you, especially after the plow goes by.
Well, I know I did that driveway because she had come home and she had I think the baby would have been maybe 8 or 9 months old in a car seat. So the baby is outside on the driveway in the car seat, and she's trying to shovel it with, I think it was a Fisher-Price shovel,
Oh, man.
right? And I just
Yeah, with
came
like
out
a
and said,
princess
"Yeah."
printed on it or something.
I
Yeah.
said, why don't you let me do this? I'm more than happy to do it. I don't think she understood until I started to push the snowblower up and down. And then she came down with the Ovaltine. Which,
That's so nice.
Yeah, in the moment when somebody plows your driveway,
Yeah.
they become almost heroic to you.
Totally.
Like, I
Yeah.
can't believe you just saved
oh, you
me here.
feel heroic when you do
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
You walk just a little bit bigger. Here I come with my snowblower. Look what I have.
Yeah.
Steve usually comes in and announces whose driveway he's
I've done 9 driveways.
Yes. Yes.
I've snowblown all the way to Breslau.
All the way to Breslau.
Everything's done. Yeah.
I love it. I used to, well, we're kind of beating this point to death, but our house was right on the end by that parquet. And there was a city sidewalk that went around. And if that sidewalk guy happened to come down our street after the plow went by, he would scoop the bottom of our driveway on his way up. And it was just the nicest thing, but I could never catch him to give him a gift. So thanks, sidewalk plow guy. I really appreciate it.
Especially out here, where I don't think if you don't live out here, the driveways are narrow, the lots are narrow,
There's nowhere to put the snow.
and you get way more snow here than you do in other parts of the city. You do, because
You
you're on the
do.
west side, right?
People drive over here to visit us and they're like, why do you have snow? We don't have any.
So here we are in mid-February, and you have like 7-foot-high
Yep.
piles of snow
We
on
do.
your driveway, and it's been a relatively mild winter.
Yeah.
It's a different place out here.
It's the way it blows in from the west over here.
Well, that's right,
Yeah.
because you're actually closer to Stratford than you are Waterloo.
Yeah,
from here.
exactly.
I met Brian on our street because we lived on the same street.
Oh, you guys were? Yeah, that's right. It's the
But
same street.
we actually really just had just a handful of just little conversations outside. I remember Billy well, but I actually remember being in Brian's presence prior to that. I was at a Christmas party at the Walper Terrace Hotel at my wife's Christmas party, and Brian was there too. I actually heard his voice before I saw him, and I knew.
Oh, it's a booming
I know.
presence
And
of
it
a
was-
voice.
and he had gone a bit of a rant about something.
Oh.
And he had a complete,
No.
he had a complete captive audience, and he looked like they were having a way better time than we were. And anyways, but really on our street, I think I just had just a few little conversations I remember you telling me one time about getting the Nintendo Wii.
Oh, yes.
And I think it was called like Wii Active or Wii Fit or something.
It was The Biggest Loser.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the game?
That was
yeah.
it. Because I was heavier for a while. Like I weighed about 220 pounds.
I don't remember
And,
this. Okay.
and I was a bit heavier, so I decided, well, I'm going to do something. And we had bought this Wii system back when they were a thing. And then there was a Wii Fit Biggest Loser game. And it wasn't so much a game as you would challenge yourself against,
Right.
those fitness people.
Right.
And it really worked.
It really worked.
I did yoga and I did all kinds of things, and I'd be down there every night doing my kind of thing, and that kind of led me into walking all the time and all the other stuff, and it really helped. It really helped take the weight off.
That's fantastic.
I kind of miss it now.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun.
I think we have one if you want it.
No,
I remember Brian saying it holds you accountable. And I think
Yeah.
Sylvia had one within no time at all.
Oh, that's great.
But so I first heard of Brian Bourke through the Poster Boy campaign. I'd love to kind of dive a bit into that. I find that just, I remember having so much incredible respect for you. And one of my favorite things about your newspaper column, Piece of Bourke,
Yes.
and the Waterloo Chronicle was Brian. Some of my favorite columns where Brian would share an interaction with somebody. And they were beautiful and heartbreaking and incredible little conversations
Oh,
that
I
Brian
bet.
would kind of share. Sometimes the whole column would be based around just this one meeting with somebody. And anyways, I'd love to hear about that. Can you take us through the Poster Boy campaign from the beginning and the kind of how it evolved?
well, the beginning was 1994, so that's 25 and a half years
Wow.
ago now, right? And,
Was it? No, I think it was just a couple years.
Oh, I know. And at the time, we had just switched the radio station, CFCA, 105.3.
Right.
The first four letters may mean nothing to you. But at the time, just prior to that, it was essentially what I called the music of your dead grandmother's life. Really. The only people who were listening to it hadn't figured out how to change the channel. So they made a quantum leap from that to a classic rock station.
And that's what I would know it as. Yeah.
There was a hole in the market. There was no classic rock station, so that's where we launched what we called KOOL FM. We were allowed to do that at that point. And my co-host at the time, who was Neil Hadley, wanted to do something stunt-wise, as they called it in radio. We'll do a stunt. And his idea was, well, I'll live up on this billboard for a month and see if we can raise $10,000. Turned out, I think we started on a Wednesday, and something happened. Like, people got into this where here's a guy living on a billboard, et cetera, collecting money for United Way. And by Friday, we had $10,000. So
Unheard of.
We're
Yeah.
3 days into it,
Yeah.
and we have $10,000. So what do? Well, we'll stay up for the rest of the month, which he did. And a couple of years later, he left the station, and they actually came to me and they said, would you be willing to do it? And I said, yeah, I'm willing to do it, but we need to talk a little bit about what it's for.
Okay.
No offense to the United Way at all.
Nope.
Excuse me. Because at that time it was probably the biggest charity in town. And then we heard about a year later that the cancer center was coming, and we said, this is something
Everybody
there isn't
needs.
ever anybody out there, right?
Yeah.
Who hasn't known somebody who's had cancer themselves, knows of somebody. And here was this chance to help build, this place. So we decided to do it with the funds going to the Grand River Cancer Center. And I think what people failed to understand about that campaign was there were no real corporate donations. It wasn't like we said, okay, hey, look, Sun Life's going to give us $50,000. That's not what happened. It was all grassroots. It was all people just coming by. And the way you motivate people to come by is you tell stories.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate that a lot of people really wanted to come and tell those stories. And some of them were heartbreaking, as you point out. Some of them were ridiculously inspiring. Some of the people I met during that campaign with, I'm still friends with today.
Oh, that's great.
Which is really remarkable.
That is remarkable. We talk a lot about storytelling on this podcast too, because we sort of feel like it's dying, and people are just going in their houses and people aren't reaching out to each other. And that simple act of getting out in your neighborhood or approaching somebody who's running a campaign and telling them their story, like you even just saying that those are still some of your good friends today, that's kind of the only thing that matters, right? That's the only thing that makes a community thrive, is when you reach out to each other and you get to know each other.
So this goes back probably 23 years. And there's a man by the name of John Bonneville. And John's, I want to say he's almost 80. Certainly looks it. Sorry.
Apologies, John.
But so one night somebody came in, dropped off an envelope that it said it was from Kegs for Cancer. Mm-hmm. It was about $3,000. So nice amount of money. Yeah. But that's it. That's all we know. And so digging around, still couldn't find out. Finally did find somebody who knew something about it. And no, we don't want to come on the air because we just want to keep this quiet. So figuring out from one year to the next what they were going to do, I stayed up all one night just to catch the guy.
Right.
Which turned out to be John Bonneville. He had lost his son Ian to cancer.
Right.
And he and a group of friends had decided they were going to hold this Kegs for Cancer. It is the world's simplest fundraiser. Drink beer, raise money.
Perfect.
First game.
Yep.
Doing it right now.
People are doing that for free.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Right? And so John did finally agree to come on and talk about his son Ian, and that was heart-wrenching, you know, as a parent myself, but John became a really, really good friend, and actually, in fact, for a couple of years on the radio station, played Santa Claus when we needed a Santa at Christmas time. Yeah. You know, kids call in, talk to Santa. Well, John was Santa.
The helpful fill-in Santa, you know, for when the real Santa's busy.
Well, you know, we all understand that.
I'm just making sure.
But it became such a really good relationship, and here we are, and I guess it's probably been 25 years.
Wow. Since
his son died, and you know, we're still kind of see each other on a regular basis, pop over for the occasional adult beverage, play some golf with me from time to time.
How beautiful is that to be able to share this experience with another person when he's lost so much?
Yeah.
Right.
And that event eventually came to an end, as all events do. Nothing lasts forever.
Right.
Right. And it turned out to be the people like that, right? The people who were out there doing things and, you know, and living their life even through that disease. I think they were always very inspiring. And I said it many times that I felt privileged to be allowed to tell their stories, because not everybody wants to tell their story. There needs to be a certain level of trust. And they trusted me to do that. And that always really made me feel really good. It's kinda, I said at the end of it, if I don't do anything else in my life, I'm good with this.
Oh, that's amazing. What a wonderful thing to say.
Brian, what did the passage of time feel like? Like, there would have been arduous and uncomfortable times up on that billboard.
What was the
like, there must have been times you looked up at the sky and you felt kind of all alone, or maybe there was constantly activity and lights around you. And
the first few were 30 days. So that's a long time.
It's a long time.
Right? And I did stay there all the time. I had my little tent on, 8 foot by 8 foot platform, and I stayed there all the time, night and day.
Yep.
I just kind of felt that was important. Plus the fact, by the time I got off the air at 10 o'clock at night, I was so exhausted. Yeah. I just fell asleep in no time, right?
Like in a sleeping bag?
Yeah, sleeping bag. Actually, after a few years, I had a blow-up mattress for the first few years, and then a few years later, the hospital felt bad for me. So they gave me one of these memory foam patient mattresses. Mm-hmm. It was awesome, by the way. And so I had my sleeping bag, my memory foam.
Did you take it home with you?
Actually, in actual fact, yes. We brought it home. We stored it in the basement. Mm-hmm. And that was the only time it came out was for Poster Boy every year.
Great.
I'd have to haul it in the back of the car, drag it up there, and put everything together. So day to day, you started your day on air at 5 in the morning. I'd usually be up around 4 trying to get ready. And then, depending on what happened, you know, there were always people coming down. Every now and then you'd come up with this idea that you thought would work, and then you'd all of a sudden realize this was a dumb idea because now you're getting no rest. Because I did that the last few years. I took the last Sunday, because I think at that point we were down to 2 weeks. I took the last Sunday and I said, this is Kids on the Radio Day. And I'd learned something over the years. First of all, that unlike anything else, you can't put yourself on the radio. You can do a podcast, but that's not the same as being on a radio station. Mm-hmm. So I said, you bring your kids down here. I will make sure they get on the radio. And I realized the kids wanted to listen to themselves on the radio. So what I ended up doing was I'd go down to the bottom of the platform, chat to the kids, run upstairs, edit it on my computer, spin it around, get it ready to play, so that when they were in their car going home, they could then hear themselves on the radio.
That's incredibly thoughtful.
Well, I had learned that from the first year, where you put a kid on the radio and then,
so what?
I could have been in my car listening to me. So I thought, okay, well, we'll just pre-record.
That's great.
Edit it all together. And just, we were planning to go on the air live till 8:30. I think it was 11:30 at night that we stopped. Just because kid after kid after kid after kid. And it was really, you know, those were really, really fun times. The day-to-day, there were times you get bored, especially, you know, recognizing the great realities of stunt fundraising is that if you give people 10 days, they'll show up on the 9th and 10th,
Yeah.
right? That everybody does that. So, you know, recognizing that, that's why we shortened it up, because we were raising more and more money every year in a shorter period of time. It's less wear and tear on the old guy too.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting
Right?
it.
Because seriously, I would come down from there, and for 2 days I'd barely be able to walk because I'd moved around so little. Like
Yeah.
I count my steps now.
Right.
I would have maybe done 300 steps in a day.
What's your step average now?
About 17,000.
Nice.
I know. I have no idea where I am.
Yeah.
I've
That's
been walking
fantastic. You've been walking
17,000
for
steps for 5 years. I have no idea how to get home.
That's a very admirable amount of steps per day. No wonder you look so good.
I know. Helps keep the weight off. but it's a great joke. How many steps you do a day? 17,000. I have no idea where I am.
Idea where I've gone. So the amount of money raised for the Poster Boy campaign for the Grand River Cancer Center was how much?
North of 2 million.
That's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
Right? When you really sit down and figure out that wasn't corporate, that wasn't companies coming and writing a check, that was just people coming and giving sometimes $50, $100. It was coming from events that were held. There was I talked about Kegs for Cancer. There was a curling bonspiel for cancer, which I never actually got to attend.
Oh no.
But, you know, there were all kinds of events like that. There were schools that helped drive that. It was driven by one teacher in particular, and she was relentless. And it's funny, everything has a connection, right? I had coached her daughter in fastball
Oh wow.
for a few years, and she was a teacher in North Lake Woods in Waterloo.
It is a small town.
And she decided that she wanted to do something for this, so she did. So she went out and she put together all kinds of events at North Lake Woods and raised $21,000 in a year.
That's fantastic.
But
That's hard to do at a school.
it is hard to do anywhere, right? And I was always I had the easy job. I figured I just had to talk about it and live on the billboard. And the people who are out there asking for money, that's the tough job.
Yeah,
So-
in many ways, I actually value that $50 coming from somebody much more than I do from a big company coming in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why the front lobby at the Grand River Cancer Center, the waiting area there, is named for KOOL FM and CKKW, which was our AM station at the time. I don't know how long that lasts, but
Yes, these things do change over time, but it's nice that it's there now.
not everything exists the same way. That's all right. Everything has a lifespan, I figure.
Yeah.
Brian,
does.
there was some nice overlap there between Poster Boy, I guess, and you writing for the Waterloo Chronicle.
Yeah.
And what I really took from that is how I really got the sense that here's a man who's really living in the present. Like, you understood the value of family. You fully understood the power of now, like what's happening right now, at what age your kids are at, what age you and your partner are at, and how it was really inspiring to me how it just felt like you were completely living in the present, and you probably through this experience you just completely had some sense of your own mortality, and you were living it to the best you could.
You know, it's nice to reminisce, right? Because and I remember those times, and we have pictures and stuff like that, and that's great. And it was a moment in time which, granted, lasted 14 years, but still a moment in time. I don't look back a whole lot, right? And I recognize that the kids grow up. My oldest kid is almost 40.
Wow.
Right? And my youngest is 32, and we have 4 grandkids, and enjoy the moment. I lost my dad when I was 17. I lost my mom when I was 20, and so never had the advantage of that adult relationship with my parents. Long gone before I got that chance. So I really value that with my own kids, the chance to kind of not sit there and offer sage advice.
No, just enjoy each other's company.
For me, it's largely annoying the hell out of them.
Are you poking them
Oh, I
constantly?
constantly poke. That's
Digging?
just-
It's 3 daughters that you have.
yeah,
right?
but I've always been like that, and I don't think they'd want to have anything different. But you know, the luxury of having that is something that I don't think you realize how much you missed having that opportunity until you get the chance to experience it yourself.
Right.
So I didn't know how much I missed that really until about 8-10 years ago, when all my kids are in their 20s and 30s and they're all grown up, and they no longer come to dad for advice or ask them where their underwear is or any of those things.
And they're teaching you how to use your technology. And
No,
looking up your
they're
TV.
not.
They're not. Should they be?
No.
Why not?
I pride myself on staying up to date.
Good for you.
Absolutely. Like I had one of the first Blackberries.
Oh, did you really?
Right.
Steve is a die-hard BlackBerry user. He will not let it go.
I had mine until about a year and a half
Yeah.
ago. and then got rid of it.
Then you went to
but
the dark side with the rest of us.
I went to the Android.
Oh, that's all right. That's not too bad.
No, I have no issue with it. No, I've always prided myself on keeping up to date with technology, just because, man, you can do so much.
You can do so much. And actually, I'm very impressed because we had barely just announced our podcast launch, where I got a blibbity bloop Facebook message from you. I'm a terrible Facebooker. People, teach me your ways. And I thought, oh, what is this? It's a red alert on my phone. I look it up, and there's Brian Bourke. So, I'm not invited to your podcast. Farwell's invited.
It was a bit needy.
No, it was fantastic. I'm so happy that you reached
And
out.
I use all that stuff as source material.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much going on
There's
out
so
there
much
that
going
you
on.
can, and the old traditional sources of finding it out. You know, as an old journalism graduate,
They're slower.
I don't know if they're slower, but there's 50,000 channels out there, and it takes an awful lot of time to monitor it.
Yeah, I do find that any news I'm looking for on my phone is half a day to a day ahead of the local news. No offense to the local news, but it does give you. I recently read this book by I want to say it was Clive Thompson. It was called Smarter Than You Think, and it's about how technology be damned and all these things that that we shouldn't be spending our time with our faces in our phones, but it does give us this beautiful ESP-like awareness of what's happening around us, connected with each other.
And you see, I disagree. I think in a lot of cases, people are less well-informed than they were 20 years ago. We have sources for information everywhere, but because of artificial intelligence, which often directs our attention to things that we may be most interested in, we don't see maybe everything we do. I was doing after the municipal election a year and a half ago, I was doing a show on the air, and I had a lady call up who was angry that she had missed the chance to vote because she didn't know there was an election on. Like, the signs weren't a hint?
Yeah.
That's not technology's fault.
How did you not know? But except that we have this idea that says we have all this information out there. Everybody knows everything.
True.
Not even close to the truth these days, I don't think.
You do have to be smart enough to go out there and look for a reliable source of what it is that you're going to read. Like, you can't just read the Android or Apple feeds of information being thrown at your phone all the time.
But
right?
then I saw people when the Grand River Transit strike was on, waiting patiently for a bus that was never coming.
No.
I saw that.
Okay. All right. That is interesting.
Right? And because we have access to this worldwide flow of information, I think we tend to focus a little bit less on what's happening in our own backyards. Now, this is a bit of obviously a promotion for a local radio station, or it could be local newspapers, or it could be local TV. But they're really the only group that are providing the resources to go find out the information that actually pertains to your neighborhood.
With reliable source information.
There are other people, there are citizen journalists, there are some very good ones. But these are the only places that have the resources to go to a city council meeting, to maybe reach out and get these people and still broadcast it, either in print or on the internet or on the air. Still broadcast to an audience large enough to make a difference. And I don't believe for a minute the traditional media is dead. I do believe it has to adapt.
No, I think that's a great point. I don't think it's dead at all. But we do find a lot of garbage out there when we're sifting through a lot of it. And the one thing when you were saying, about reliable sources and being your local radio and your local news station being that sort of first contact to that information is they do have to answer to somebody, where maybe a citizen journalist doesn't have to, or a podcaster. We really don't have to answer to anybody yet.
No.
That's coming, but...
And so you really have to trust the people who are doing it, right? Because there's conspiracy theory podcasts out there too. I should have bought shares in tinfoil years ago. Slap on your tinfoil hat and have a listen. I heard it during the election campaign all the time. I'd even have callers call up and say, well, you guys have been bought off by the Liberal government. And I wanted to sit there and explain, first of all, none of that money is going to broadcast media, so shut up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
And I would say it on the air all the time, look, I have not received a check from anybody. You give me a check, maybe I'll think about it.
Yeah.
But I haven't got a check.
Yeah.
Right? And this distrust it's hard to take at times because, we lost Christy Blatchford in the last couple of days. May not agree with everything she does. She does tend to be on the right side of the spectrum. Fair enough. But a brilliant journalist. And, where's that next one coming from? And what's their audience going to be? I don't know.
Yeah.
Brian, when it comes to newspapers, from what I can see, there's no coming back. So I'm watching some of these community newspapers getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Like I've watched Rolling Stone magazine like go from this size to smaller and smaller. Playboy's changing. They don't seem to come back from that. Is that how it works?
I don't think it certainly doesn't come back to its paper form.
Yeah.
Right? Does it come back in a digital form? Well, everybody's struggled with the ideas of paywalls.
Yeah.
Hasn't worked really well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people doesn't appear they're willing to pay $1.99 a month for information, let alone $6.99 a month.
Yeah.
And so I don't see the way back from that.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a format out there that creates that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's a difficult time to be in print.
And that could come back to what your point is about the news outlets needing to adapt.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I don't know, maybe I don't know what the future looks like for papers. I always used to like the physical feel of a paper, the same way I like the physical feel of a printed book.
Yeah.
But I've adapted. I read off my iPad now.
Brian,
Right.
when we interviewed Mike Farwell, it woke a memory in me that I had from about 10 years ago. So what Mike said was Mike was talking about how he went and spoke to a broadcasting class of students, and they didn't have a single question for him afterwards. He said it was quite the blow to his ego, and he couldn't believe that these were broadcasting students. And I remember maybe 10 years ago, you having somewhat of a similar experience. And I think your conversation also bridged off into talking about how some of the resumes you see come in from young people. And where's the curiosity, and why are you not? Anyways, does this ring a bell with you?
Yeah, and it's a problem in the broadcast world, I think, in terms of people who are doing news jobs. I think it's become a lot of cut and paste, and let's repeat what somebody says. At that point, you're not doing journalism, you're doing public relations.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lack of a tendency to rewrite, which you should be doing. Your job is to take the information that somebody gives you and relate that in a manner that's understandable to the audience, understandable and important to the audience on the other side. That's your job. And I don't think you can do that couched in bureaucratic language. And I think you have to write in plain English. And there's not enough writing that goes on in broadcasting anymore. And that's because people are crushed for time. You know, and when I first...
Everything's immediate. Right?
Well, it always was immediate in radio. But the problem was, or the great advantage was, you had plenty of people. I started off as a City Hall reporter. That was my job. All I did was go to City Hall.
Right.
Those don't even exist. Most of the time when you sit at a municipal council meeting, there are no reporters there.
So naive, I don't really understand. How did they deal with that? Did they just have a PR person or a spokesperson that just sends out a statement and that's that?
Well, every city will send out the agenda for its meeting a few days beforehand. And some media outlets will read through those and maybe pick up one or two stories that they might want to cover. And they may decide not to go to the council meeting at all, just cover it later. But it's in that case, it's about relationships. You have to get to know people.
What if something really good happens at that council meeting? Missed opportunities.
Well, I treated council when I was covering it in Windsor when I worked there. Very simply, I would go on Monday, and then I would file at least one, really big story for the next day. But it would usually provide me with 4 or 5 other stories for the rest of the week.
Smart.
Keep yourself busy, right?
Keep yourself busy. Yeah.
And that's pretty much the case of every municipal agenda. But they've gone away from covering it, because it's too late. Why do we want to leave somebody sitting there for 8 hours just so they can get a story? But they haven't. You can get 4 or 5 stories. There's lots of stuff out there.
I think there's amazing things that we have right here for us. So I can think of 2 examples right now, Brian. One is Brian was on TV on the radio today. I'm talking with James Sebastian Scott. I think it's called Host to Host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Betwixt 2 hosts.
And one of the conversations was something that was in the news today, which is I think Tim Hortons, I guess, is kind of making some adjustments to
their loyalty program.
Yeah. And then the other thing was a little while ago I saw you with Chief Brian Larkin on the radio.
Yes.
Isn't that an incredible thing that you can sit down with the police chief and you're getting authentic, real, sincere answers? That's how it's coming across to me.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the things that I've enjoyed since coming back to radio a year and a half ago was the opportunity to do this, just to talk to people.
Yeah.
Who are, sometimes right there. I did an interview last week about the coronavirus. And the person I talked to was a University of Manitoba expert in emerging viruses who spoke to me from Nairobi, Kenya, where he was doing some work on emerging viruses.
Yeah.
And he had written an article on a web page called The Conversation, which is kind of a go-to place for really interesting stories. So we reached out to him and said, would you come on the show? Like, absolutely fascinating guy.
Yeah.
And he's halfway across the world talking about a disease that's another halfway across the world.
Yeah.
Right? And so just the opportunity to be able to talk to these people from all over the place and really beyond what you might get a 15 or a 30-second clip. We're doing 15, 20-minute interviews with people to kind of examine the whole thing. You're not going to love every one of them. Mm-hmm. But for me, I find it fascinating because I'm still an information junkie.
Oh, I am too. And it's not about loving every one of them. It's about just hearing new information and deciding whether or not that's for you or not for you, or seeing somebody else's side of it, right?
And we can't do everything serious, so we do some fun stuff from time to time. And that makes, like today, we were just making fun of the Ford government's e-commerce website.
Yeah.
I heard you quip today to James Sebastian. I think he said something like, well, you booked my whole show or something. Brian, how does this work? So you arrive at the station. Somebody else is kind of helping put these stories together. Have you already thrown these ideas out, or are they bringing them to you? And how much time do you have to even prepare?
It's a collaborative process. So I will oftentimes at night see something, send it to James. And the reason why I use James as a resource is because he's been there for a couple of years. He has contact with everybody, right? So if there's a topic, we can find somebody.
Right.
If we're taking something from our article and we want to drive that story forward in a slightly different direction, which is really what we try to do. So it's very collaborative at that point. The difficult part is, and James remarks on this now and then, I don't work with notes, right? So I have my laptop, I have my phone, and I have my microphone. I don't have anything written out. I don't have any questions prepared. I ad-lib everything. And
You're having a real conversation.
well, that's part of it for me, and that's always been part of it for me. The other part of it is I just absorb all the information I can, and then I want to ask questions that I think somebody out there who doesn't know as much about the topic might want to ask.
Based on what you've already learned from this expert or this other person.
Sure.
It's kind of the opposite of, we talked the one day about these wrestling interviews. What are they called?
Like a
last shot shoot interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where there's just like a rapid questions and no chance to redirect.
Yeah, and they're not with the company anymore, so they can just say whatever they want. It's usually very bitter and stuff.
You see, for me, interviews are more about the listening than the talking. Yeah. So I'm going to ask one question to start with, and oftentimes the rest of the questions will emanate from whatever answer they give me, and then we can take it from there. I find that to be better than saying, okay, I've got this question, this question, this question, this question. No, let's just have ourselves a conversation and see where it goes.
I don't want to make it clinical sounding or anything too, but it's also just part of being a professional. Like, you're very good at this.
I hope so.
You are. Right. You're very good at
it. Well, yeah, his mind is like so equipped and all this life experience. You could put anybody in front of you, I'm sure. And Brian,
Marshall's holding his hands out beside his head and making a large head.
Well, as we describe it in this business, a mile wide and an inch deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brian, when you have a police chief, Brian Larkin, on, there's another police officer there.
Yeah, Mark Crowell.
Yeah, what's he doing?
I think he's keeping an eye on Larkin.
Is he protecting the chief?
No, they're both in...
I thought maybe making notes if something has to be looked into later.
Well, actually, they both keep notes all the time. They're always writing down something to look into later. But Mark will sometimes have a different perspective on it than Brian will, because Brian kind of looks at it from the high view, and Mark might be a little bit closer to the ground. It's nice to have both of them. And they're very... I find them to be very open about things.
Yeah, that's what Marshall keeps saying. And then when he hears these interviews with Larkin.
Yeah, because the last time we had them on, we were talking to them the day after that hit and run, out on Highland. Yeah, and they were very open about it. Now I also understand, having been doing this for years and years and years, that you keep certain parts of an investigation quiet.
For sure,
you have to.
Yeah. Right.
So you have to have that balance.
And you have to respect that. You're not in there to get hard hitting and be like, what do you guys think?
The reality is they're going to tell you what they want to tell you. And it would be great to get the scoop, but you have to have a relationship here too. And that won't last if you want to try to do that kind
Definitely
of thing.
not. And that's such a sad story.
And I've never, in all the years I've been dealing with regional police, and that goes back a long time, ever really had reasons to question, why aren't you giving this out? And I've had many occasions they've said, look, I can't tell you this right now, but give me a call in 90 minutes and I'll tell you something. But that was built up over years of calling them
and having trust
and earning a little bit of trust, because they test you now and then. They're cops. They do that. It's okay.
Well, it's probably preferred.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Brian, I don't know anything about your relationship with Mike Farwell, but there's so many parallels there, aren't there? When you
I love when the two of you are talking together. Yeah.
yeah.
Mike and I go back. I actually tried to hire him at one point when I was still at KOOL, and I can't remember what he was doing at the time. I said, look, Mike, let's meet, play a round of golf, we talk about some things. So we talked about that. Didn't end up hiring, mostly because he's a horrible golfer. But the opportunity just wasn't what he wanted at the time. So we've known each other for a long time, and he's a good guy. And the thing I always say most about Mike is that he's a genuine person.
Oh, he is.
And the things that he does, he believes in. I was saying today, because today was the day he officially got his fundraiser award, which is really well deserved.
Yeah.
And I was saying today that, you know, in some ways it's a young man's game, because like I quite honestly, I go out and I do some emceeing and I do help out, you know, the causes that are important to me, but I also turn some down now too, because I just can't be out every night.
You wouldn't be able to do Bourke for hire?
No. No,
Do play-by-play for the Rangers.
We've talked, you know, and we've talked about, well, his passion for hockey, of course, keeps it, and the Farwell for hire thing. We've talked about that, and I know a couple of years ago I said, Mike, stay away from a goal. Don't set a goal, because you know what happens when you set a goal? Everybody focuses on the goal.
Right.
You know, are you going to make it? Are you going to make it? And then if you don't make it, is that a failure? When you don't control anything, like you don't control who's listening, you don't control who does something for you. Much the same situation that I had with the poster boy. We open up the mic, we tell a story, we hope that you come and help us. You know, we raised $225,000 last year. We raised 187. Is that a failure? I don't think so.
No.
And then I look at it another way, Mike, and say, look, you're going out and doing all these things. You're going to fall over dead. Then you're not going to be any help to anybody, and I'm going to have to do a 6-hour show. So selfishly,
That's a good one.
right? But his passion for that, of course, comes from a place where he lost his two sisters. So completely understand that. And if I was 20 years younger, I'd love to do the same thing again. And when we were doing Poster Boy, when I started, I was 25 years younger.
Well, you both have to be commended for this effort that you put forth to help our community, because a lot of people will just go out there and just do the job and, you know, talk away on the radio, and off they go in their fancy Mitsubishi Eclipse on the way home or whatever, and not
It's a
reach
10-year-old
out.
Mitsubishi Eclipse, okay? Let's be clear about that.
but not reach out to the community and give back, and it takes a special soul to do that, I think.
And I enjoy those, like I did the Fire and Ice Gala a couple of weeks ago. That was really great for Leadership Waterloo Region. Terrific organization. I'm doing another one at the Clan Glass Gallery at the end of March.
I love
It's a
that building.
It's a 1920s theme, so I
Oh.
can just use my usual clothes.
I love it.
Brian, when you were a city councillor, I've always been curious, how accessible do you have to be to your community, or is it a matter of choice as to, I once heard a councillor say, well, at one point that my phone was on all the time, and then there's a point where I was getting drained and you can't do that forever.
Yeah, you know what? It's really, it's not all encompassing. It can be, if you want to go out to every event you get invited to, every possible thing. It certainly can be, but in terms of responding to people, it's not that bad. Certainly, when you get a moment, you know, or an issue that's of particular importance to the ward, then you can be overwhelmed. But you know, that's the job that you signed up for. And that's, I think you have to be accessible. You know, here's my phone number, here's my email. Send me an email. It's always easy to put that off for a little bit and say, okay, I'll look at it. But you have to be accessible.
You do. Yeah,
When you were elected, did you have a pretty good sense that this is going to work? Like I see your life as like it's putting a piece of puzzle, like a big puzzle together. You build this and then you build this, and then now you're at a point where you can run for.
Well, yeah.
Was that ever a goal?
I talked about it a little bit in the past. Everything just happened to.
I imagine people more said to you, "Hey, Brian, you should." Yeah.
It happened to converge at the same time. I will tell you this: there are some moments of that are really satisfying when I think back on that. We had the big argument here in Ward 2, which is what this is, about the Muslim Cultural Center up on Irvisville Road, and that was, you know, a moment where I did hear from some people who said some horrible things. But I heard from a hell of a lot more people who said some really good things. And so that sticks with me. You're always going to have people who are against things. And in fact, I recognize your right to be against things. I quibble with sometimes the way that you said it. And that's, and again, that's fine. Not everybody's always going to be happy. But I think what I did find in council was frustrating. If you wanted to make a change, it's difficult to do.
Right.
You're one vote. So that makes sense. There is a finite pie of money, most of which is already taken up, right? From plans that have been made, and rightfully so. So that's not a criticism of former city governments. Quite simply, the reality is you have to plan ahead. It's not like I can say tomorrow we're going to put a new $500,000 park in Ward 2. That money's not sitting around waiting for that to happen. That's 2, 3, maybe 4 years worth of planning. So that can be a little bit frustrating.
You can plan yourself right out to the end of your your
Well,
stay,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And, you know, there are moments, there aren't that many issues that come up over the space of a 4-year term that are, you know, wow, look at everybody pay attention to that. I can probably count them off on the one hand. And, but, you know, I think it's a valuable experience for anybody who wants to do it, and I encourage them to do it. And and I believe this, even though name recognition does help, certainly helped me, hard work pays off.
Yeah.
And, you know, Royce Badali is the councillor for this area now. Royce got there by working hard. Just going out. Nobody knew who Royce was. But he went out there, knocked on every door, and got himself elected. Good for him.
Isn't that true of everything? Like, I don't know. I always tell my kids nothing worth having or anything worth having is at the top of a hill, you know?
So, and there were a number of different reasons why I opted not to run again. One of them was I kept looking at council, and I would look at the makeup of the city and say, there's enough people like me here. Maybe we need somebody who doesn't look like me, and maybe is younger, is different. And Royce is that, and some of the other councillors now changes the makeup of it. And depending on the generation you come from, it changes the way you look at things.
Yeah, and that's incredibly insightful.
And I had a good 4 years. I really did enjoy it, and I learned a lot that has come in handy.
Well, my apologies for taking up some of that time while you were ward councillor talking about the dog waste filled garbage bins in our neighborhood.
Garbage. Here's a funny thing. Garbage cans are a really funny thing.
They are a funny thing,
right? Because there was a big problem with the city of Waterloo where we were finding household garbage in park garbage cans.
It's still happening, but yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
In our
We
waste
have a system for
you
this.
can pretty much throw out anything you want.
I have a theory that it's secret garbage. It's garbage that somebody doesn't want their
Garbage that they're
housemates to
embarrassed about?
Yeah, I do. This is what I think.
I have no idea. But it's
There's
always
no
been an
other
issue.
reason. There's no other reason. The system is in place and it works.
You see, and I like some of these new dog poop systems. Like there's one in Waterloo Park.
Yeah, and we have one actually in Clare
You
Hills.
have one in Clare Hills.
Sara.
Right?
I
You
think
drop
it's
it
called.
in, and it gets turned into biofuel, I think.
That's what it says.
And like that's great. We should have those all over the place. But again, the city is always hamstringed by money. They would like to put those in all over the place, but they don't.
And it works like a Moloch, right? Like the big Moloch
Yeah.
garbage receptacle. So it goes way down deep into the ground. It can carry a lot. It doesn't need to be emptied very
But
often.
I was always confused by that garbage issue because I thought you can throw your things out at home.
Yeah.
Like really, like we've all done it. I've put a fridge by the side of the road. It's disappeared.
Oh, it's gone that day.
I don't think it goes to the landfill. I
Nope.
think the fridge pirates have taken it.
Yes, the fridge.
Brian,
But you can do anything. You can throw anything
can.
you want.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? I don't know. Maybe you're lazy.
Yeah, and to anyone new to our area in Kitchener-Waterloo, if you put something anywhere near your boulevard, it's free. So
It's
be
not-
careful.
yeah, it's not just in this neighborhood. It's everywhere.
Is it everywhere?
If you want to get rid of something, just put it out by the side of the road. It'll be gone.
So don't store anything there.
Especially if it's metal.
yeah.
The only thing that we kind of think twice about is a child's bicycle.
Yeah, because you're never
Because you're
quite
like,
sure.
did they park it there? But they should know better.
Yeah, well,
Kids, you
there you
should know
go.
better.
Right? And mattresses, I
Yeah.
kind of question that, but I've seen people take those too.
Well, yeah, I've seen it too.
Right?
I've put mattresses
And
out.
people,
Yeah,
and people
mattresses.
have
They
taken them.
do, yeah.
See, but that's isn't that good? That's a
Yeah.
recycling economy.
It
It's
is,
always a
yeah.
great feeling. You're like, I can't believe the mattress
I
is
know.
gone.
Sometimes we're watching that. We put this old organ out there at one point, and we were watching for a little while with our coffee. You know, it wasn't a half hour later.
Yeah.
Somebody took it. Yeah.
Well, we would do that when we would have our garage sale that we never made any money off. We would put stuff down at the end of the driveway, and then we'd just sit in the garage and
just
maybe
watch, yeah.
have an adult beverage and just watch and say, how long is it going to take for that to disappear?
It's not long.
And it's good. You know what? If somebody wants that, can can find another use for it or recycle it or make a few bucks off it, good, have at it.
I think there's one guy that runs a business, the guy with the pickup truck with the trailer
Yeah,
attached to
right,
it,
yeah.
because he's out there every week.
He's always
since we
looking for
moved
the
here.
metal, though, right?
He's looking for metal, but then he also takes, well, I don't know, yeah, because I see him take patio furniture and fridges and cube freezers and stuff like that. I've never really noticed if he's taken like solid wood furniture or anything like
Well,
that.
good for him. Gets it out of the. I will tell you my very best side of the road find.
Bring it on.
And this goes way back. This is probably 1986. I started working here in 1983. Almost 37 years ago, Monday,
Wow. Happy
when
anniversary.
I started working
Yeah.
here. So at that time, we were located at the old CKCO building right across from Grand River Hospital. So we lived in Westvale, so I would drive out, go down University or whatever that is. Oh, go down Glasgow. 'Cause that was the easiest way. And I'm driving down Glasgow one morning. And it's 5:30 in the morning, and out on the side of the road on Glasgow, in the nicer part of town, is this beautiful 3-foot tall cabinet radio from the 1940s.
Like this one right here in the hallway.
Yeah, actually, that might be it.
No.
No, very, very similar.
similar, yeah.
Very similar to that. That's on the side of the road,
Crazy.
up by the garbage. The garbage cans are out there, and there it is. I'm
Yeah.
going,
It's free.
must be free,
Yeah.
right? So anyways, I stop the car because it's 2:30 in the morning, and I'm going to work, and I lift up the hood, toss this thing in, bring it home, and plug it in, and it works.
Yeah.
Or still.
Right?
works
It took
out.
about a half an hour to warm up, but yeah, it absolutely works. So I actually felt so bad for a couple of days. I drove back down Glasgow and found the house and knocked on the door and said, "Did you actually mean
Yeah, did I steal your
to
antique
throw that
radio?
out, or was that what you were using for your listening pleasure?" You know, at the end of the driveway, and they said, "Oh no, we don't need that anymore. That's fine. We're good." Couldn't believe it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm proud when I find chairs like that red chair behind you was what I call a ground score.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah. Painted and everything.
my daughter's missing a red chair.
Oh, is she? I found it in Westvale.
Did you?
I did.
Okay.
I had a neighbor who put the most bizarre things in his recycling. I'll never forget this blue box full of like knives, like
Nice.
20 knives. Yeah, and kids are walking to school, like, past this big blue bin of knives.
With like a black handled
Yeah.
chopping knife.
Yeah,
That's
lots of
interesting.
knives, yeah.
I would
That's
think you'd
not
want to
the kind-
donate
That is
that.
not the kind of thing that I would
No.
leave out on a recycling bin.
I haven't seen it on the list. No. I haven't seen it on the accepted.
I've
like, I think it was
donated
like-
things to, the Salvation Army. Have you ever gone back to the store to see if your stuff's in there?
No, I did do a tour of the city once when my dad's camera was stolen out of the back of our Jeep Wagoneer, which I don't know if you remember those cars, but if you locked yourself out, you could just unscrew the front triangle windows and get in.
That's handy.
Anyway, I was at this photography class at Conestoga College, decided with a buddy we would go and grab a beer at the Walper afterwards, back when you see live music downstairs. Somebody from our class or something, I don't know, must have seen us coming, and they went in there and stole all of our camera gear. And this was just before digital cameras. So I did like a real tour around the city of each pawn shop and all these places. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, I've gone back into the thrift stores to see.
And?
I've never been able to find anything.
No? So your stuff must be good.
It's either going.
There's somebody out there that looks like Burke. It was that kid that came to your house for Halloween.
Well, I did donate some station clothing.
Yeah.
A few years ago.
Well, that'll do
'Cause
it.
They'd worn out a little bit, and I think we'd actually changed the logos. They were telling me I had to get rid of it, so I took it off to a couple of stores. And there's somebody around there walking around with an old vintage KOOL FM classic rock leather coat.
It's well, I have 2 teenage daughters, and their go-to style of stuff that's cool looks like stuff that my dad like wouldn't even touch out of his closet in the day.
Yeah.
Like just old dad coats, no offense, but this kind of stuff is what they're looking for.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know. I don't really have it. My wife makes sure I'm reasonably dressed.
yeah, you look great.
Today's an exception. She wasn't feeling well, so she stopped caring.
Love it. I had a question, which was I was wondering what brought you to broadcasting and brought you to KW, and when did you start working?
Broadcasting that was easy because when I was in high school, I joined the Reach for the Top team
Oh, did you?
because that's the best way to attract teenage girls.
Yeah.
I was in grade 10, so I was like the youngest Reach for the Top contestant. They had because my parents every year would buy me a copy of the World Almanac, which I would read. So yes, nerd, no question.
Information junkie.
Yeah,
Yep.
read that stuff all the time, and then so went on Reach for the Top, which was of course filmed at the local television studio, and filmed. I meant that
Filmed with film.
Yes,
Yeah.
with film, and I was fascinated by that whole, TV production kind of
We're
thing.
bedazzled.
And then when I moved on in high school a little bit further, I got hurt when I was playing basketball, and they needed an announcer for the regional final in the gym, and they said, "Well, you can read, you do it." Okay, I'm assuming most of us in this high school can read, but they meant that in a different way.
Yep.
And but actually, my first MC gig, I was 7.
Really? What was it?
I MC'd the talent show at Dutch Lake Elementary School in Clearwater, British Columbia.
I bet there's no film of this anywhere, though.
There is a picture.
Is there a picture?
And
That's
strangely
great.
enough, I had a blazer on.
So, did you have a list of people you would announce, or were you just sort of like winging it?
No, I had the whole list of things that I would announce, and here's the next act, here's the next act. Remember, this is 1965.
So you were a good reader then, because 7 years old, that's pretty impressive.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that was my first MC gig, and then decided to go to college, went to Fanshawe College in the School of Broadcast Journalism there, got a job at CFPL Radio, reading the English sports on weekend, English soccer, because this was a time where there was no way to get the English soccer scores unless you listened to the radio. Right, so that's...
You tuned in, yeah.
So that's, Liverpool 2, Chelsea 0. I had to learn to say 0. And then that kind of morphed into more of a job, and eventually ended up working full-time at CFPL for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
Until I was fired.
Story?
No, they were downsizing.
Okay.
And at that time, I think Diane was 7 months pregnant. And then they fired me. And
No stress.
No, not at all.
No, I got this, honey. I got this.
Fired on a Thursday, true story. New job the next day
Great.
at CKDK in Woodstock, which people called Sictic. So, funny story. They had changed the name of the radio station a couple of years before because it used to be called CKOX.
Oh, was it? So not much of a leap. That's quite a sense of humor over there.
So anyways, worked there at CKOX, CKDK, whatever it was called, in Woodstock, then left there after a year and went to CKWW in Windsor. Stayed there for a year and then came up to CFCA. In my year in Windsor, I went from City Hall reporter to afternoon newscaster to morning newscaster to news director in 4 months. They fired the news director there and then gave me the job.
Well, congratulations.
And then that news director came up here to CFCA Radio and then called me and said, I can hire somebody I like or somebody who can do the job. You can do the job.
There were obviously not too many hard feelings.
No, not at all.
No.
And started there. And at that time, it was, like I said, the music your dead grandmother's life. It was a 5-minute newscast every 30 minutes, except for 15 minutes at 8 o'clock in the morning. 15-minute radio newscast. Nobody does that anymore.
No one's going to listen, right?
It was busy. But it was fun. It was, met some really terrific people, some great broadcasters. And learned some good things. Started off working all nights in London. Then got the good shift.
Yeah.
8 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Well, that's pretty good.
Somewhere during that shift, someone in my house got pregnant. I don't know when that happened. Right?
You were there at some point.
8 p.m. to 3 a.m. It was a really, really good shift. And then moved on from there. So it's, I don't know. I just always enjoyed it. And then when I was in here for the first few years, first almost 10 years, doing that format with really bad music and really boring newscasts, because I'd have to do now the weather for the CFCA listening area from Environment Canada, including Breslau, Waterloo, Kitchener, and Elmira. I'd have to read it like that.
I could listen to that all night.
Yeah.
So then they decided to change to classic rock, and the program director came. I think I was the only person left on the air from the original group that was there. And they said, we want the guy in the halls, not the guy on the air. I knew that. So you're going to pay me to be a smartass? That's the idea. Awesome. I'm in. So I'd never met my co-host till the day I started with them. Lisa Brandt and Neil Headley.
Yeah, that's wild.
And Lisa spent years up at 680 News in Toronto and is still a good friend today. We had never met each other until the day that we worked together.
So it was just like a cold start.
This is it. Go.
Yep.
Go be funny.
Yep. Yeah. You know what the limits are. It's fine. Yeah.
No idea. None of us had ever worked in that kind of a format before.
Right.
And it's just, all right, well, let's... And we discovered the easiest thing in the world to talk about is your life, because then you don't have to struggle to remember.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? It's way easier.
That's the great rule about, that's my rule about not telling lies, because then you never have to remember anything. If you're just a truthful person.
Yeah. I made a conscious effort over the years to not make fun of my my kids and my wife, I would always end up being the butt of the joke usually.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
that
a
was
much
always
safer
important.
route.
Well, remember, 1994, when we started with that station, my youngest child was 8. So they were 8, 10, and 13.
Babies.
They were babies, but they were just getting into that period, and the station was, of course, booming, and everybody's parents were listening to it, and their kids were all that age. And all of a sudden, the oldest one comes home complaining that now she's Brian Bourke's daughter.
Right.
I get it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's not much I can do about
I can't
this.
help it if Daddy's famous.
Right,
honey.
and that's at whatever little level of fame that is, right? And the other girls went through it too, and they were always really good. They helped out at everything, and but what's become odd is that over the last few years, I've become Alison Bourke's dad because my daughter Alison owns Oxford Learning Centre.
Right.
She's also on the board of the Chamber of Commerce and at Lutherwood. Does a lot of stuff in the community.
Underachiever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so sometimes she meets people, and are you Brian Bourke? No. I get it the other way. Are you Alison Bourke's dad? Well, yes, I am, as a matter of fact. I think so. I can check the sources, but
Yeah. Right. Was this during that time between
8 p.m. to 3 a.m. Who knows?
Brian, do you see it as like right now where you are? Do you see it as like a body of work? Like, you're this seasoned, broadcaster, and you're on 570 News. Does your life, professional life, feel like chapters? And this is like your current body of work, and it might be, do you appreciate that, like in terms of like where you're at now and how you sound now? And
Yeah, every chapter is different. I couldn't have done what I'm doing now 30 years ago. I don't think I could have. I think I'm doing it well. You're always your own worst critic, but I couldn't have done it 30 years ago because I didn't know enough. And I think we all tend to mature as we get older, and especially in this business, I think we learn to listen to other opinions and consider them. Whereas I think 30 years ago would have been a little bit different. And so I look at it a little bit. I think every chapter has led to another chapter, and has given me some skills and strengths that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But I enjoy the chapter that I'm in.
it must feel good. I just saw 570 News for the first time. That is a state-of-the-art, amazing looking facility.
Oh, it's way better than some of the crap holes I worked in the past.
Oh, it's a snazzy looking joint.
Oh.
I did see you in there, but you looked busy working at a computer, so I didn't want to stop
so
and
much-
say
I
hello.
spend a lot of time looking busy.
There's so much space.
Is that the trick
it's
to
a
success?
gift.
Okay.
Or there's things like I didn't realize, like when you watch on TV, you don't realize that like Mike's in his own room and Paulie or James Speckin's in another room, and there's a space between those rooms, and everything just sounds and looks so amazing.
Well, and like I've worked in some horrible places. Like I worked
bet.
at the top of the Viscount Hotel in Windsor, where CKWW Windsor was located, and I can tell you stories about the engineers who we nicknamed Lenny and Squiggy. They dropped an air conditioner out of the 21st floor.
Like performing an installation?
Well, I'm assuming that was the plan. It just
Wow.
didn't go that well.
Yikes.
And then I remember them. We had a terrible rainstorm, and we had the tile roofs, and it's starting to leak inside the newsroom. So Lenny and Squiggy put together this system of 2x2s and heavy plastic, put it underneath the
They
leak,
tarped your office?
and aimed it towards the wall, which flooded out the 21st floor restaurants. And they just kind of went, well, we didn't see that coming, did we? So it worked in some really, really, really kind of bad places.
Yeah.
So I've been lucky. I've worked in 2 news stations. Like over my career, we moved from the CKCO to King and University. And that was right at the time where we moved from typewriters and printers to computers and monitors. So that was an entirely new experience. Now you no longer have a piece of paper to read.
Right.
Now you're reading it directly off a monitor. So it was really nice. A brand new building. It was terrific. And then this one as well. It's a state-of-the-art building, which does make doing your job a little bit easier.
It has windows.
Windows are nice.
Windows are nice.
Well,
to work
CKCO and newsroom didn't have any windows.
No.
There were the mole people underneath there.
As we start to wrap up, I want to ask Brian something. I heard on a different radio station today. They're saying how,
What?
how there's a day coming. You know how every day there's like cheesecake day or something. Right?
Oh, I
There's
know.
a day
I
coming
feel
up.
bombarded by
Yeah.
the days.
There's a day coming up about changing your name day. If you're not happy with your name, just for a day, just go with a different name. Have you always liked the name Brian Bourke, and has it worked
Is
well
that
for you
your
in
name?
radio?
That's actually my
Okay.
name.
Yeah.
That's kind of an idiot if you made it up. I wanted for a while to go with Brian Richards in college. I did a little bit, a couple of newscasts, and then one of the professors said, "You know, that really sounds stupid, right?" I go, "No, but."
Oh, like the two first names?
Yeah.
A lot of people have the two first
Yeah,
name thing.
right.
Marshall Ward.
Yeah, it's a good
Wow.
name. I have two last names.
Then I thought, well, maybe, like J. Paul Huddleston, who was big in radio for a while, maybe I could be B. Richard Bourke, and that sounded kind of stupid. And then I just kind of settled on Brian Bourke, and I figured I'd be safe, but I get all the time, you're not the Brian Bourke who ruined the Maple Leafs, are you? Sure, why not?
Sure, right. I'll take it.
Although I will tell you a story about that. I was playing in a golf tournament at Rattlesnake Point years ago, and I am in a cart with Mike Harris.
Can I stop you to start over again?
Sure.
Could you say that, and I'm leaving this in, could you say that first line in your radio voice that you were giving us before? I was playing in a golf tournament at yeah, I'd love it.
All right, I will try that again. I was playing in a golf tournament at Rattlesnake Point.
I love it. Okay. So Mike Harris is in your golf cart.
Yeah,
And what?
So Mike Harris, not Mike Harris, who was the premier.
Oh, got it. Okay. So who's this Mike
and
Harris?
Not Mike Harris, who skewered his way into a seat in Kitchener-Conestoga. Not that one. But Mike Harris, the curler,
Oh,
who won I think it was a bronze medal in Nagano in Japan.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike Harris, the curler. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've met a few Olympic medalists, but it's always nice to hang around with a curler. And we're golfing, so it's the only two sports you can drink and play at the same time. And so I'm in the cart, and Brian Bourke and Mike Harris. And then this wave of carts comes over the hill because they all want to see Mike Harris and Brian Bourke. They're expecting Brian Bourke, the guy who's the general manager of the Maple Leafs,
Right.
and Mike Harris, the former premier.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that kind of disappointment since the day I got married. It was completely ridiculous.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
so when the Brian Bourke who ruined the Maple Leafs, he was with the Vancouver Canucks for a while. He got fired. So I wrote to the Vancouver Canucks offering to take the job and change my name.
Oh, that would be great.
Because
Yeah.
mine's got an O in it. It's spelled
Yep.
properly. Well, the other one is some English bastardization of it. And so I wrote to the Vancouver Canucks offering to take over the job. Never got it.
Yeah.
But did run into that Brian Bourke a couple of years later.
yeah?
And he actually told me, unprompted, about the letter that he'd read it. And he thought it was really, really funny.
Oh, that's great.
So he was good about it.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
Brushes with fame,
Yeah,
And
exactly.
lots of those.
Sarah, take us home.
I don't know. I want to keep talking.
Take me home.
I did want to let you know
Country road.
John Denver.
It's my other hobby is
Do you sing?
sing and play the guitar.
Did you see my guitars in the front?
I did. Those are really nice.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's a Washburn and it's an Epiphone, but
And
they
I
do
have-
the job.
I have an Ovation Millennium,
Yeah. Okay.
which is the rounded
Yep.
back, and it's got the really fancy top. It was one of the funniest bits we ever did on the air, I believe, was it was called Bourke Unplugged.
Mm-hmm.
It was somebody else's idea, and I just came in
Oh,
with my
I remember
guitar.
listening to that.
I come in and play a really bad riff on the guitar, and people would have to choose it and decide what it was. And the funniest part of it was our co-host at the time, Jeff Lumby, was just incredibly talented at completely slagging me. Like, it sounds like every song I've ever heard. And
It was a fun segment.
it was a
listen to.
very, very fun bit.
For some reason, I was always in the car at that time when that segment was on. And then there was another time, a few other times. Did you ever get any dead calls on those contests that you would run? So you'd run these quick contests where you'd play just a short clip of a song or a backwards clip of a song or something like that. And if you could call in and say what it was, you'd win, I don't know, gift certificate
Whatever.
somewhere. So if you ever had one of those contestants where the call was dropped, it was me. I would pull over at the side of the road and get my flip phone out, and I'd be so excited that you picked me that I would like press the mute button or something, and you guys would be like, "Are you there? You're there?" And I'd be like, "Damn it! I know what this song is. I'm not gonna win the gift card to the keg or whatever it was at the time."
Well, and those were times, like, you're always trying to, contests are funny things,
Yeah.
right? And so people want to win cash and vacations. Those are the two things. Give away anything else.
Oh,
it
I
doesn't
just
matter.
wanted the bragging rights that I knew the song
No,
first.
And people want that too.
Yeah.
We once gave away dinner for one.
Oh,
So only lonely people could enter. We did that once. But people want cash, or they want
trips.
trips,
Yeah.
or they want to play a contest that's fun.
Yeah.
So that's where the kind of Bourke Unplugged thing came from, because it was just fun and stupid. And
Yeah, it was fun. I think you did a great job.
we could just make ridiculous comments, and Lumby would slam me, and I'd walk away with my feelings hurt, and it was all theater, but it was something that really, really worked, and it was so much fun.
And you probably enjoy. Yeah, it was fun.
Oh,
That
it
was the
was
point. So if we invite you back sometime, will you play some music for us? Maybe we'll prepare a song together.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
We'd be awesome.
I think we'd be awesome.
It's the kind of thing that gets people on their feet and headed for the exits.
Exactly. Well, I think that should be our goal. Let's try
Yeah.
that.
Brian, I don't know if I'll ever have this time with you again, like in this way, but thanks for this hour.
Yeah.
That felt almost like a eulogy. That was awkward, off-putting in some ways.
Rest in peace.
Hey all, thanks for meeting us in Bonn Park. Please like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on the platform that you're listening to. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bonn Park Podcast. Original music by Alan Lung.